So hi again, everybody. I hope all is going well, and as we wrap up the series. So I've created this short video to introduce you to a few resources that I'm familiar with and that might be useful to you in your teaching practice. These projects are mostly of a variety that I would call collaborative media projects. These are primarily driven and or led by coastal First Nations who partnered with galleries, museums, archaeologists, and anthropologists, media specialists, and other content experts. So we will be providing you with all of these links on the series website. So don't worry if I kind of cruise by these URLs kind of quickly. I'm just kind of showing you the content more than the address. So the first four projects I want to show you are all accessed in one location or can be accessed in one location. And that's on the Bill Reid Center's website on the display space area. So these are projects that had media components that were created by SFU students, in which the BRC or the Bill Reid Center has had the pleasure of creating these little exhibits around in our little display area to kind of showcase this work. So the first project is a community-led project that has won a number of awards, actually, and I've heard of this referred to as a community-led biography of the Sq'éwlets Nation. So it was created by the Stolo Research and Resource Management Center and the Stolo Nation with a number of non-Indigenous collaborators. It was funded by a national funding program called the Virtual Exhibits Investment Program, which is managed by something called the Virtual Museum of Canada. So a lot of video work was done with the community to create this website. It's a really large site, so I'd recommend exploring it thoroughly. You'll quickly notice that the site uses Sq'éwlets language and concepts for navigating. And there's recordings of how these terms are pronounced, so you don't have to guess how they sound. There's two main sections, Sq'éwlets and Sq'éwlets. Under the Sq'éwlets section is where I often point people. This is where you find a section called Our Voices, and it's where a lot of the video work is located that was done specifically for the site, interviews and things like that with people. So scrolling to the bottom of any page on the Sq'éwlets site, you'll find classroom resources. So having a K-12 teacher resources is a requirement for receiving the federal funding from the Virtual Museum of Canada. And another stipulation of that funding is that the site has to be fully bilingual, French and English, so you can easily switch between the French and English sides of the site. Another unique feature of the Digital Sq'éwlets site is the use of something called TK labels, or traditional knowledge labels. There's a lot to unpack with these labels, and it's really easy to find more information online if you want to dig into them a bit more. But in short, the colonial collecting process was a destructive force. A lot of material has ended up not just like cultural materials like belongings and artifacts, but like knowledge and images and text and recordings has ended up in far-off museums that are totally divorced from the peoples who created these things. So TK labels have been created as a way for Indigenous peoples to assert their sovereignty and their own management systems over their own traditional knowledge that's circulating online and might no longer be in their control. So you will see these labels throughout the Digital Sq'éwlets site and on specific images or video. The TK labels are a simple way for communities to express local protocols for accessing and using cultural heritage. So when you click on one of these little tags, so if you see the gray banner underneath that video, clicking on that little black tag, you see the label for secret and sacred knowledge, and it tells you that there's additional knowledge about the subject being addressed in this video that's restricted from just anybody knowing. So it's very specific people in the community likely are the only ones that can know this knowledge. Communities using these labels are able to customize these tags to reflect their own culture. So you see how the Sq'éwlets have put their own word here for traditional or secret knowledge and put their own definition for what that tag means to them. So this is just one example. You'll find 4 tags that are associated with every page on the site, which means they apply to the entire website. And you can click on them and get a lot more information within the site about how they're used and why they're used. So the next resource I want to direct you towards is called Intangible, Memory and Innovation in Coast Salish Art. This was an exhibition put on by the Bill Reid Gallery in downtown Vancouver, and which we at SFU were able to host a very scaled down version of, again, focusing on the student film work, kind of building the exhibit around that. So you can link to the exhibition details at the Bill Reid Gallery using this link here, which you can also find on our website. And within the description on that webpage, on Bill Reid Center's webpage at SFU, you can link right to the 6 videos kind of curated all into one page. So as part of this exhibition, student filmmakers worked with 6 Coast Salish artists in the show to shoot short biographical films. Each Coast Salish artist essentially just describes who they are, talks about their process, and about the role of tradition and innovation in their artwork. So I think these videos are a really great resource for exploring contemporary art, for having the authentic voices of the artists who are speaking to the work that they do. So I really like these resources. And I think the Aaron Nelson Moody one and Les Lai are probably the best ones if I had to pick my favorites. The next collaborative project that I think is a really great resource for teachers is Huyat, Our Voices, Our Land. This site is a collaborative effort between the Heiltsuk Nation, researchers and project partners from Simon Fraser University and the University of Victoria, and a media company called Green Coast Media. So the Heiltsuk memories, language, oral traditions that are presented in this site all come from community-initiated research, archival documents that were assembled by the community, as well as about 30 interviews conducted specifically for this project. So Hoya is the name of a very important site in Heiltsuk territory that reflects the people's long-term connection to the place. One of the most interesting things about this site is the virtual tour of Huyat itself. And this is created using something called Gigapan technology. So it's super high resolution 360 image, and you can literally move through the landscape, turn the camera every direction, and kind of click on and go into the next still image. You can click on these little white spots that you see on your screen. Some of them will lead you to the next frame. Others will have like dropout videos or text information explaining the landscape and how the people use the landscape and their relationship to all these different resources and more than human beings. So the site is really media rich, has numerous videos and interviews that relate how people sustainably and selectively harvest salmon. There's explanation about how clam gardens are constructed and used, cedar bark harvesting, how to maintain root and vegetable and berry gardens, and really how people collect medicines and material for everyday life. Now, the last one of these little exhibits that I want to show you that we have featured on the Bill Reid Center website is something called To Speak with a Golden Voice. So this is another exhibition that was created by the Bill Reid Gallery in downtown Vancouver. And it was done in 2020 to celebrate what would have been Haida artist Bill Reid's 100th birthday. So as part of that exhibition, we at SFU partnered with the gallery to host a number of guest lectures and create short documentaries of people who had either worked with Bill Reid or collaborated with him, as well as created this immersive tour of the exhibition itself. So this is guided by Beth Carter, who is a gallery curator, and Gwai Edenshaw, who's a Haida artist and curator. And you can access this virtual tour right from within the page at the Bill Reid Center at SFU. Each one of those little teal dots you see in the kind of left corner is a video clip that you can, as you move through that space, you can click on those dots and the curators talk to you about the exhibition and their vision and Bill Reid's life and legacy. So my last few slides, I just have a couple of honorable mentions. These are a little more distant from the work of the Bill Reid Center. So the Haida Now exhibit at the Museum of Vancouver ran from 2018 to 2021. So the exhibition is over, but there's still a lot of great content online that can be used in the classroom, including a virtual kind of walkthrough, much like the one I just explained on the previous page. And there were also a number of really great interviews done with Haida artists and community members for this exhibition, again by the SFU students at School of Interactive Arts and Technology. Strangely, these are not accessible or very difficult to find anyways at the Museum of Vancouver's website and YouTube page. But all 7 of them can be accessed through the Making Culture Lab website, which I've linked to here, and which we will link to in the session PD pages, website pages. So the Making Culture Lab is Dr. Kate Hennessy's media lab, and that's where a lot of the students who did this work are kind of associated with through Sq'éwlets. Living Tradition, Kwakwaka'wakw Potlatch of the Northwest Coast, is another really great resource. I mentioned the potlatch in my video on colonialism earlier. So this site details the Kwakwaka'wakw people's experience with the 60-year potlatch ban, the imprisonment of their people for practicing their traditions, and the confiscation and decades later repatriation of a lot of these cultural belongings. So this site's really rich in historical and contemporary photos and videos. So I think it's a really great learning resource for understanding the Kwakwaka'wakw potlatch. It also has a really cool virtual tour where you can go into the Umista Cultural Center at Alert Bay, and into this gallery you can select each mask, and it gives you a really high definition, 3-dimensional view of the mask that you can rotate and zoom in on, and from actually like any kind of perspective. And you can also watch a number of films within the virtual gallery on a monitor that's hanging from the ceiling, which is kind of neat. So like the Sq'éwlets site, this Living Tradition site is also a Virtual Museum of Canada site, which means it's bilingual and has educational resources built into it. Something I noticed when creating this slide was that there's lesson 10 here is about making totem poles. So it doesn't actually ask students to recreate specific Kwakwaka'wakw totem poles, but it also doesn't expressly tell teachers not to copy totem poles from specific nations or peoples or families. Also problematic is that this resource also includes instructions on how to hold a play potlatch. So this is problematic because you wouldn't ask your class to have a play Easter or a play Ramadan or a play funeral, for example. And as you should know at this stage, doing this would severely trivialize the importance of these events. So this is a good example of how you need to use your knowledge and judgment to vet these resources, even if they're coming from Indigenous Cultural Center. So I can't speak to the site creators. I don't know entirely how the site was produced or how the educational resources were vetted or approved. I do know that the site has been around for more than 10 years, and it's likely a product of its time. Voices against cultural appropriation have become much louder nowadays, and I'm confident Indigenous educators would tell you to stay clear of this lesson like this. So just another example of how you really need to continue thinking critically about your choices and about what you're encountering online. So finally, there's this thing called the Emesh mobile app that the Bill Reid Center created back in 2014. The idea for this app was to create an awareness of what it means to say we are acknowledging that we're gathered on coastal Salish territories, but also to contextualize and to some degree decolonize the Indigenous art on the SFU Burnaby campus. So the mobile app for Apple devices is quite dated, so we usually direct people towards these web pages in this URL. The resource consists of 2 tours, Coast Salish Place Names Walk that goes around Burnaby Mountain Park, which is just kind of adjacent to SFU campus. And that place name walk is focused on replacing the settler names for the land with the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh place names. And it provides descriptions about the significance of those places to the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh. The Indigenous Art Walk, which is the second walk within that app or web pages, really came from the realization that so many pieces of Indigenous art are sitting silent on campus with really no explanation of the culture or the knowledge systems that they represent. So if you think back to my video on Western notions of art, these works are represented within that Western perspective that treats them as purely aesthetic or devoid of any meaning. And this project tried to counter that perspective by relating some of the traditions and the worldviews that inform each piece. So just to wrap this presentation up, I just want to share some of my experiences or some lessons, I guess, I've learned as a settler creating content in this space and teaching Indigenous studies at SFU. Um, I think this can all be summed up by just saying, it's not so much about having prior knowledge and knowing where to find resources, but to know how to look when you do encounter material that you would like to use in your class. Listen to and for the voices of First Peoples. Ask yourself, does this resource present authentic voices and perspectives of First Peoples? Also, when I say listen, I don't just mean for their voices, but to their voices. So if you hear people saying something is not appropriate or it's disrespectful or it's an appropriation, listen to those statements. It's likely not just one person's opinion. It's likely coming from a much broader chorus of voices. Um, of course, evaluate your sources. Google the people and the organizations who authored the resources that you want to use. Are they Indigenous? Do they work with or have the support of the Indigenous communities that they're representing? And finally, these are kind of cliche, but always err on the side of caution and use your best judgment when you're vetting things for your classroom. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the series. Thanks.